Welcome to the Keep Yours podcast, where we'll help you decode the complex financial system so you can better understand how to thrive within it. This is where you'll learn strategies and life hacks to stay out of debt, claim your financial power, and keep what's yours. Here's your host, David Bradshaw.
Citizens of the world, welcome back to another podcast from Keep Yours, a survival guide to capitalism. Today we are talking about you, and you have been programmed. Before we get into more financial basic topics, I just want to run everyone through a quick exercise to illustrate the point that most of our minds have been manipulated to think one way. And before we can think another way, we have to first acknowledge that this actually exists and acknowledge this is a problem so that we can change it. So if you have a piece of paper next to you, let's go through this simple exercise. So I want you to think of a number between 2 and 9. Okay, I want you to multiply that number by 9. Now I want you to add the two digits of your number together. Now I want you to subtract 5 from that number. Now I want you to match your number to a corresponding letter of the alphabet. So A is 1, B is 2, C is 3, etc. Now I want you to think of a country in Europe that starts with that letter. And now I want you to think of an animal that begins with the last letter of your country that you chose name. And last, I want you to think of a color that begins with the last letter of your animal's name. So now that you've hopefully completed this exercise, and if you need a repeat, here it is again. Think of a number between 2 and 9. So I'm going to do this exercise with you real quick, and I'm going to choose that number 3. Multiply that number times 9. So I have 27. Add the two digits of your number together. So 2 plus 7. And I have 9. Subtract 5 from that number. So I end up with 4. Think of a country. Match your number to the corresponding letter of the alphabet. So 4, I have D. Think of a country in Europe that starts with this letter. Denmark. Think of an animal that begins with the last letter of your country's last name. So I'm with a K here. So I'm going to go with koala bear. And then think of a color that begins with the last letter of your animal's name. So for R, I'm going to have red. Now, for most of you, you're going to have an orange kangaroo in Denmark. I am going to have a red koala bear in Denmark because I also understand how this game is played. However, kangaroo was the first K that came to my mind with an animal's name. 95% of people are going to have an orange kangaroo in Denmark. This exercise is half a trick and half to show your habit. So all the numbers are going to land you at D. Denmark is the only European country that starts with a D. And while there are many K animals, killer whales, Komodo dragons, kangaroo is the easiest. And of course, off the O, orange is the easiest to come up with. So it's actually 98% of the people come up with this answer. So I just show you this to think, wait a minute, we're almost all programmed to think in the exact same way. So how does this affect us when we're talking about capitalism and freeing ourselves from the bondages that could be put upon us in capitalism, right? And the answer is this. Corporations know this. Corporations know that 98% of the people think exactly the same way. And this isn't always bad, but when it comes to you keeping your money, keeping your sanity, and doing what you want to do, You need to know this. So if you're aware of your programming, you can do something about it. If you're not aware of it, you're just living in it. And all these companies continue to try and manipulate you because they know that your response is predicated upon the same response as everyone else. So they can get everyone else, 98% of the people, to do exactly what they want to do 98% of the time. So you need to know this, know that this is part of the game out there, know that this is something that's stacking the system against you, and go, okay, I need to now think a second time. I need to think independently for myself about this programming. So let's take this right in to a banking situation. So most of us have a bank account. Not everyone. There's 10 to 15% of the people, adults in this country, that are not banked. But most of us have a bank account. So how do banks make money? Banks make money in two basic ways. The first is from interest. So banks borrow money from you. But in most of the cases, they don't even have to pay you for it, because they've convinced you that keeping your money with them is a safer option than you keeping it yourself, which may be true if we're talking about leaving it under a mattress, because it's much harder for somebody to rob a bank and it's insured by the federal government than it is for them to come rob your cash stash in your mattress. So in one sense, they are correct on that, but they've overplayed that to the point where most people basically give your money away to the banks. They're not paying you for it. And if they are paying you interest, they're paying you a very small amount compared to what they're loaning it out. So banks take your money. Let's say you've got $1,000 in your savings account. They're going to take that $1,000 and they're not going to loan it out one time. They're going to loan it out 10 times. So a bank that takes your $1,000 and it loans that money out 10 times. So it has $10,000 in loans. All paying them, let's say, 5%. Even if the bank paid you the 5% on your $1,000, which it's not, it's probably going to pay you maybe 1%. So its real cost to you for your $1,000 is $10. In a fair system, they give you 50. Now they loan that money out 10 times. So they're loaning out 10,000. So they're making 500. So on your account every year, if you've got $1,000 sitting in it, the bank makes $500 and gives you 10. That's a pretty good profit margin. And you know what the bank's response to that is? How many times can we do this? How many people can I find to give me a free $1,000? And perhaps actually the value of that $1,000 account is slightly more than the $10, because usually you can get a free checking account. In fact, you should have a free checking account. If you're paying in any way, shape, or form for your checking and savings account, you're getting robbed. Switch banks immediately. Do that now. Do that tomorrow. And don't let the bank that you're leaving sell you some bullshit and keep you there, because it's easier. And if you're not interested in being financially savvy, then you're probably already going to turn off this podcast anyway, because you don't care about your own money. But if you care about your own money, don't let banks charge you fees. That's easy. So this is the way that the system works. The second way banks make money is by charging you fees. Now, if the bank's charging you no fees, the bank can argue that, hey, if you've got a checking account, they process all your checks for you. That's a value. So instead of you giving $10 in value, maybe they're giving you $20 in value. So they're paying you $20 to make $500. Still a very good deal for them. So banks will also play this game with you, that notice of account changes, filled with a bunch of legal jargon that you can't understand, that says they're changing your account type and your new account will charge you a monthly fee. Now, once you've had an account for a long time, this is standard practice at a bank because they want to charge you fees. So now instead of them paying you that $10, they're going to charge you $5 a month. So for the privilege of having your $1,000 at their institution that they get to make $500 on, they're now going to charge you an additional $5 a month, i.e. $60 a year, pay you back 10 of that in interest, and they're going to take $50 from you for the privilege of you holding your money there. This is the other way they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money on fees. And then if you don't make a payment on time, they got a late fee for you if you're the one borrowing it. I read an article a couple of years ago that literally said most people are too lazy to go change their bank account even when their bank starts charging them fees. If you want to get out of the shackles of capitalism, you have to take responsibility for your money. Capitalism puts the responsibility on the individual. You get to choose what you want to do as a job. You get to choose how much education you want to get and pay for. You have choices. The government doesn't make them all for you. The downside of that is when you make poor financial choices, the government isn't there to save you either. So if you're not willing to go move your bank account for them to stop paying you fees or at least call them, 2 months ago I missed a credit card payment date. $39 fee pops up immediately. 1 day late. Got an email from them that said, hey, you haven't made your payment. You're a day late. Went, made the payment. Wrote an email saying, sorry, I missed my payment. Please remove the fee. And they removed it. That's all it took. $39 that saved me. Not only that, but then they're also going to charge you interest on whatever balance you had as well. Got them to remove that too. All with an email. Why? Because they want to keep my business. So you threaten to leave and take your business, they'll eliminate the fees for you. That's the leverage that you have. So in this same context, if you want to learn how, or if you want to understand what a run on a bank means, this is how you understand it. This is the easy. You're going to give them $1,000. I just told you they're going to loan that out 10 times. Well, if you come and ask for your $1,000 back, well, they don't have your $1,000 because they lent it to somebody else. Not only did they lend it to somebody else, they lent it 10 times over. So anytime Americans don't like a bank, if you think Goldman Sachs is a shit bank, if you think Credit Suisse is a shit bank, if you think Bank of America is a shit bank and you don't like them and they've treated you poorly, if you're really pissed off that Wells Fargo opened up accounts for you without your permission and you're pissed off about it, your power as a consumer is to move your account. Just like your power as a consumer is to buy products from the people you want to buy products from, to shop at the stores that you want to shop at. If you don't like the way that Safeway does business, go buy your groceries at Kroger or Sprouts. If you think Whole Foods charges too high prices, you're not required to shop there. This is the personal choice. Now, however, you are allowed to shop there. You can, and you can always pay more, and you can pay more for convenience, and that's a discussion we're going to have many times going through this. So you've been programmed. You've been programmed by this world to do certain things, and it knows it. When you go to rent an apartment, many apartments will offer you a first month move-in special. 1 month free. Now, why do they offer 1 month free instead of just reducing the rent by 1/12? Because you've been programmed. Because apartment companies know that you will spend a certain amount of months there because you don't want to move again. So if they give you 1 month free, but keep the rent at $1,000 a month, over the year they'll collect $11,000. But guess what happens in year 2? They collect $12,000. It's the same reason that your employer will give you a bonus when you start straight out of college, but give you a reduced salary. So they'll say, oh, well, your total salary package was $50,000 plus your $5,000 signing bonus. We gave you $55,000. But the next year when you go to get a raise, they'll be like, oh, well, we're giving you a 10% raise to $55,000. And you're going, wait a minute, $55,000 was the same that I made last year because I got my bonus. Oh, yeah, it is. But this is how they play financial games with you because you've been programmed. and you're not thinking about the bonus that they gave you up front. And once they figure out that some of these things work, well, then guess what everybody else does? They copy them. So when you go to sign up for an apartment, they know that you're going to stay for 1.87 years or whatever the number is. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but I know it's more than one or they wouldn't play these games. They know that you don't want to move, so they'll also raise the rent on you. If you want to stay month to month instead of give them a contract, oh, that's going to be a higher rent. Why? Because most people aren't prepared to move. So then by the time most people walk into the leasing office to figure out what their lease is going to be for the next year, and there's an increase. Why is there an increase? Oh, because we can, and because we know that you won't move. And if you do, you probably won't do it in the amount of time you have to. So we're going to charge you 1 month at a higher rate. Year 2, we're going to get $12,000 out of you instead of $11,000. And if you stay another year, even more. Or if we raise the rent, even more. But we gave you the discount up front in a way that you rationalized. You did, hey, if the place cost me $1,000 a month, but I got a month free, it's $11,000 for 12 months. That's not $1,000 a month. I'm doing good. I got a discount. And you don't think about year 2. You've been programmed. So the first thing that we have to address when we're saying, hey, we want to create a better life for ourselves, we want to free ourselves from the potential shackles of capitalism. Because if you're not savvy about this, if you don't put effort into your financial well-being, nobody else is going to. And please don't pretend that at any time ever in this country, the government or anybody else has done that for you. America was founded with indentured servitude and slaves. White and black people standing right next to each other, literally being sold, coming off of 2 different boats from 2 different places. The white people were sold for a set amount of time, and the black people were sold for life. But they were literally all treated as commodities to be bought, sold, and traded. That's the foundation of this country. So it's come a long way, but it's still not operating in your favor. It's not operating for you. So if you want it to, you have to take on that personal responsibility. So when I'm talking about bank programming, I'm not talking to you about your checking account. It applies to every place you have money and every place that you owe money. And the places where you owe money are going to be the worst offenders when it comes to fees. They want you to pay your bill late so they can charge you a late payment fee. They want you to go to a paycheck loan lending place so they can take 10% of your pay before you ever get it. They want you to have shitty credit so they can charge you more for a car loan, a home loan, every loan. So the system is not set up for you to thrive in. The system is set up for the capitalist to thrive in. And if you're not being the capitalist, you're not going to thrive. So the whole point of this education series is to get you to A, understand capitalism, and B, tell you how you can start participating in it as the capitalist. And it's not as hard as you think, and the concepts are not that difficult to understand. And the process of you doing it isn't that difficult to understand. And once you have money, there are a lot of resources out there for you to go and find places to put your money to work, or ways to just go buy low-cost index funds that then grow for you with low fees. Great strategy, but here's the problem. Most people aren't at zero yet. Most people aren't ahead. You're not talking about investing. Most people aren't in the market because they don't have any money. But I want to also give you perspective on some of this, because wealth is a relative concept. The person who spends $100,000 a year and has $200,000 in the bank is not as rich as the person who spends $10,000 a year and has $100,000 in the bank. You would say, oh, based on their bank account balances, person A is richer. They have $200,000 in the bank. But that's not true, because their living expenses are higher. So wealth is a relative concept. And let me tell you, in Indonesia, most people earn less than $4 a day. And companies are competing for the business of these people. You don't make $4 a day. Minimum wage in the United States is about to be $15 potentially. In many places it already is. Amazon's now paying $15 an hour. So if they're competing for people making $4 a day in Indonesia, how much are they competing for your dollars here? And they're going to use every trick and every tool that they can to suck as much as that money out of you before you ever see a penny. And the reason that we name this a survival guide to capitalism is the first thing that you've got to figure out is, what are all these traps? What are all these places where there's just shackles lined up to lock you in, to charge you more fees, to take more of your money? The reason we call this Keep Yours is keep yours. Everybody else is trying to get it. You get to decide whether or not you want to give it to them, and don't let them take it from you. So our social system today is great at promoting the idea that you are a better person based on the amount of money you spend. And if you want to test this, all you need to do is go into 2 different jewelry stores. In the first store, you go in and you tell them you have a $1,000 budget. And you're looking for a wedding ring for $1,000. In the second, you go in and you tell them you have a $25,000 budget. And you compare notes on the comments made by everyone in the store. You compare notes on how well they treat you. And if you were to ask the owner of that jewelry store, undoubtedly they would tell you just off of face that they want all customers treated the same. That they want to treat everybody, regardless of their spending, exactly the same. Because we want all customers for life. They'll give you some bullshit like that. But because we're socially conditioned, we view the value of the larger expense and the words that will be used by the salespeople and how they treat you will be very different. I dated a girl once who used to like to shop at very expensive stores just because they kissed her ass. And she wasn't wealthy. She wasn't poor, but she wasn't wealthy. And in fact, she had 2 jobs at the time, and she viewed her job waitressing as her money to spend on her. And I said, that's fine. No, I get that. That makes complete sense. But I would always, like, why do you want to shop there? Why is the ass kissing worth paying $100 for a tank top that you could buy for $10 somewhere else? But she saw great value in that. She loved it. She loved walking in those stores where they doted over her all the time. And I said, well, I'm sure they love you as a customer because you spend way more money than you need to spend just to have someone kiss your ass. I was like, you should just record an ass kissing thing on your phone to make yourself feel better about yourself. But if you need somebody else to make you feel better about yourself, then you're going to be broke because they will tell you things to make you feel better about yourself, and they're going to take your money accordingly. You need to know that your social conditioning can lead to very bad outcomes for you. And I'm sure a lot of you out there that are listening to this probably already know this. You're probably in one of these situations, and you are the exact people that I'm trying to help with this. But regardless, companies are spending a lot of money to get your information, to target you. The same way I'm saying they're targeting people in Indonesia making $4 a day, you're making a lot more than that. So you're going to be targeted a lot more. When you live in the wealthiest country in the world, you're going to be targeted the most. Because compared to a lot of people working in the rest of the world, you are already rich. There's been a lot of 1% conversations running around lately, and a lot of accusations about the role and the requirements of the 1%. But everyone always wants to look at that 1% as just of the United States. But if you make more than $30,000 a year, you're in the 1% of the world. And for the people who are against the 1%, who also make more than $30,000 a year, this becomes a big conundrum. Wait a minute. I'm railing against the 1% who are making billions of dollars here in America, not realizing that from a context perspective, I'm the 1% for the world. And you need to do the same thing when you look at yourself as a consumer in America. You're in the top place for consumerism, which means you're in the top place for people coming after your information. Target's a great example. They spend a lot of money buying information on you. In fact, Target spends so much money buying information on pregnant women, they often know women are pregnant before their own family members. There's a famous story out there of a dad going into Target irate because his daughter literally got a mailer from Target for 30% off of diapers, and he walked into Target and he said, "My daughter's not pregnant. Why are you sending her ads for baby products and coupons for diapers?" Turns out his daughter was pregnant. How Target knew that, I'm not sure, but I do know that Target will go and buy lots of information about you that's out there. And you go, okay, well, what information about me is out there? Well, unless you pay for everything in cash, you can assume that every purchase you ever make is known. If you buy that on a credit or debit, if you buy it on a debit card, your bank knows about it. If you buy it on a credit card, your credit card company knows about it. And those companies will sell that information to you of what you're buying to whoever wants to buy it. This is a back-end way that companies make money, selling your information. This is all Facebook does. Facebook collects all the information you put on there and sells it to marketers to make trillions of dollars. And you're giving them that information for free. Everyone else is collecting all of your information, and there's companies out there that are compiling all that information so they can push you new products and sell you new things. I deal with this on business loans from time to time. And a couple years ago, I decided to go a different route because I needed a loan for inventory, and I do most of my banking through my standard bank, but there's underwriting and banks want to have perfectly things lined up. And I'll get into the banking process on that in a later podcast. But at the end of the day, I decided it was easier to just go out to a third-party finance company who would give me the couple $100,000 that I was requesting on basically a personal line of credit that I'm going to pay back, and my personal assets were going to vouch for that. And I'm going to pay a little bit higher interest rate, but the process is a lot easier, faster, and I don't need bank sign-off and underwriting permission and all this other shit that I didn't want to deal with. So I did that. And for the next 6 months, I probably received 15 phone calls a day for people offering to sell me money. And to each and every one of them, I already did the deal. I'm already done. Why are you trying to sell me something I just bought? This is the effect of like, I just bought a jacket and now I get 50 ads for jackets. I already bought one. Now we all know that Google and every other website or search engine is going to track you throughout. So anytime you go and look at things, and the frightening part now, people say, well, I just even had a conversation with somebody about it jokingly, and then it showed up in front of me on Google. How much they're tracking you and how much they know about you is a ton. But you've been programmed, and they know that. So I would bet that Amazon is going to be so good at knowing who is going to buy which new product they come out with that they could order within probably a 2 to 3% variance rate. If they had a new widget that they thought everyone was going to buy, they would probably be within 2 to 3% if they just pre-ordered them and shipped them literally to everybody's house, knowing that they would click and buy that within the next 5 days. Like, that's how well they know you as a consumer these days. They're going to track everything that you buy. Now, if you want to be anonymous in that, go pay cash. But you can't pay cash for everything. And in fact, I just read now there's restaurants that don't even take cash anymore. So know that you've been programmed. Know that big corporations are out there coming for you, trying to sell you shit that you don't need, trying to get you into products that don't make sense at all. And there's a Latin word for this that's caveat emptor, which means buyer beware. And you, as the consumer, need to beware. You need to be aware that companies all the time, companies like Target, are going out of their way to find you. And once they find you, and they go, oh, you're going to be an expecting mother. Well, great. Then they're going to start throwing all sorts of propaganda at you. Well, to be a good mother, you're going to need, apparently on average, to spend about $8,000 at Target after birth. Because that's what Target says they make off of each pregnant woman they get to shop at their store. $8,000. Which is fascinating because when I read this, I had two conversations. I had one conversation with my younger sister, and she's got 4 kids, and she's pretty frugal. And she laughed, and she said, bullshit, I'm spending $8,000 on each kid. I'd be broke as can be. I've got 4. And I had the same conversation with my younger brother who lives in Southern California and his wife, and they looked at each other and they said, yeah, we probably spent $8,000 on our first kid. So it's easy to spend the money. And especially if you're making it, it's even easier to not stick to a budget, to not stick to that, to not understand that they're trying to sell you that, and to make the easy choice of, oh yeah, they're selling you this. And it's not you went in there and spent $8,000 at once. It's you went in there and bought the crib, and then you bought sheets, and now you need to buy clothes, and you need to buy diapers. And Target's very savvy, and they will send you coupons for diapers and then mark up the cost of orange juice, knowing that when dad goes to the store exhausted with the coupon to buy diapers, the expensive item, he's going to pick up 5 other things he needs so he doesn't have to go to the next store, even though those 5 items are more expensive. And they know exactly which 5 items dad buys and exactly 5 items mom buys. And they keep those prices higher intentionally at their stores than elsewhere because they know that you've been socially programmed and conditioned to pick up as many things as you can in one trip. In fact, you've been socially programmed to be efficient, which is a good thing, except for when it works against you. So Target's very clever about getting you to spend more, about getting new parents to spend more, about sending ads about how if you spend more, you're going to make a happier child. You won't. There is no way that my younger sister's children are less happy than my younger brother's children because they spent more at Target. Children only care about the love that parents give them, not where their shit comes from. Most of my younger sister stuff came from either other siblings, their kids, thrift stores, or other church members who exchange clothing with each other all the time. You don't have to spend tens of thousands of dollars on your child to have a happy child. And in fact, probably the less money you spend and the more time you spend with them, much more valuable that way to them. And then we've got the small number of people who will actually clip coupons, look for the savings, won't pay for convenience. And these people often get ridiculed as the outcast from society. Oh, why are you wasting your time with that? Right up until the time where they retire earlier. And they look younger and they have less stress in their life because they realize the system's set up one way. So you can be the majority. You can shop at the convenience store because, yeah, it's convenient. But you also pay 2 to 3 times the amount that you would if you didn't shop at the convenience store. You can spend 10 times easily the amount of the cost of your lunch by eating out versus not. This is a personal choice. And they don't keep sending you ads and putting ads on television that make it seem like you're a happier person when you make one choice versus another. And this is the way that you're programmed. And that they program you. And in part, I will tell you the key to surviving in capitalism is to start turning some of this off. Watch less television. Read more books. Then you'll see less ads. Turns out, they're not very good at getting ads into books. Yet. I'm sure that's coming. I'm sure that's a service that Amazon will happily offer. Oh, hey, here you go, free books, minus the ads in the middle of them. So they're actually not free. There are very few things that are ever free. But the point of this podcast, before we really get into the basics of money is you've got to know that this system is not set up for you to thrive in unless you're the capitalist. Once you're the capitalist and it's your money being invested and it's you're the one that holds the debt that I'm lending. If I'm lending you money and you owe me interest, I'm happy about the interest. You're not happy about paying it. I'm happy as the capitalist loaning it to you. You have the choice whether or not to take it. But you've been programmed to think that you need more things than you do. You've been programmed to buy things in advance of when you can afford them. It's termed old-fashioned to not buy anything you don't have the money to buy. That's an old-fashioned term, which to me is absolutely ridiculous because that's a fundamental tenet of capitalism, and not ending up on the bottom side of it is don't buy things you don't have the money to pay for because they end up costing you way more money. I had a roommate in college from Alaska. He got a check every year as an Alaskan citizen. Oh boy, did he spend that money quickly and on junk. So in college, we had a fish tank with different fish in it. Usually piranhas is what they ended up with, and then he'd have to feed them with goldfish, and he'd have to buy products for the tank. And he had to buy the actual tank and the fish, the whole setup himself as well to start with. Spent probably thousands of dollars. Probably $2,000 to $3,000 in total, I would say, over the 3 years we lived together on a fish tank. Complete waste of money. He bought an iguana at one point. What the hell are you doing in college with a pet iguana? Eventually let the damn thing out because it couldn't afford to feed it anymore. And he always wanted to get something else. And of course, the pet store's not going to tell him no. They want to sell you anything you want to buy. And this is my friend who ended up with so much student loan debt that he decided that he needed to go work as an independent contractor in Iraq for many years and almost got himself killed. Like literally put his life on the line to try and pay off some of his debt, when most of it was used for things that he didn't need to buy to begin with. I bought all of my stuff at the used store, whether it was clothes that I could find there, or certainly all the furniture in the house, most of the things in the kitchen. I either borrowed from my mother's kitchen or went and found very cheap. Pots and pans that other people had discarded and other things that still had life left in them. Choosing to pay less. It's a choice, but it's not the one they're going to put in front of you. It's not the one they want to do. Clothing companies don't want you to go buy used clothing. They don't want you to shop at thrift stores. They want you to buy new clothes because then they make more money. The incentive is not for you as the individual to do better. The incentive is for companies to sell you more shit, most of which you don't need. So the reason I did the exercise at the beginning of this was to show you that you've been socially programmed. And not to take it personal, because here's the biggest piece of this that I want you to take away. You're not alone. The system is set up by leprechauns trying to steal your gold. By the greedy little leprechaun who wants to put all the gold and not share with anybody. In many ways, that's how the system's set up for you right now. Think about the foundation of capitalism with banking and what I told you earlier. The banks have no incentive to make things cheaper for you, to pay you more interest. If we all required that they did, they would, but we don't. We don't move our money out when they start charging us fees. We take it lying down. Oh, and then we rationalize it. It's just $10 a month. That's $10 a month that you have to go earn to give away for free. It's the effect of having a bunch of beggars outside of your place of work. And imagine that every day you got paid in cash. You make $15 an hour, you work 8 hours a day. Every day when you leave, if they handed you $120, and I realize they're not going to hand you $220 because the government's also made them a tax collector for you. Well, for the government, not for you. Every business owner is turned into a tax collector by the federal government. That has nothing to do with capitalism. That's just a law created by the federal government because they can't trust people to pay their own taxes. Also realizing that until 100 years ago, there were no taxes. So there's your expansion of government to begin with that shouldn't have existed. They just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and trying to control more and more and more. Another system that's not set up to necessarily help us all. But they pitch it that way. But it's certainly not set up from a company perspective. They're trying to sell you more stuff. And if you don't like talking about finance and you don't feel like you have a financial vocabulary and you don't feel like you know what's going on with capitalism and finance, my message to you is you are not alone, but that these concepts are not overly difficult. I'm going to explain them to you over the next few podcasts, the majority of things you need to know to get yourself back to zero and start participating in the capitalist society as the capitalist. And you don't have to do it on a large scale. It does not require huge sums of money. Because this goes back to the idea that wealth is relative. So if your monthly expenses every month are $2,000 and you've got $5,000 in a savings account, that's a good start. If you've got $10,000 in your savings account, but your expenses every month are $20,000, your savings account isn't covering anything. And you say, oh, well, how could somebody's expenses be that high? Well, they are. Go buy a multi-million-dollar condo in New York and just the payment on that alone would be $10,000 to $20,000 a month, no problem. And you haven't even paid your taxes or the tax on the property itself or for food or for the rest of lifestyle. Because you don't live in that expensive locale. But imagine that. Imagine if you had $5,000 in a bank account and you made $4 a day in Indonesia. Now you're super wealthy, relatively speaking. So when we talk about capitalism, don't compare yourself to Bill Gates. You don't need Bill Gates' money to be happy. Bill Gates' money won't make you happy. What you do want to know is that you're making smart moves, that the system's not working against you, it's working for you. You're not going further down into debt. And that you can pay your bills, that you can sleep soundly at night not having to stress about your finances. This is what this podcast is about. This is the message that I'm trying to share, is that the tools that you need to get to what amounts to your financial freedom, and by financial freedom, where I mean that every day when you go to work, besides paying your taxes, you're working for yourself. You're working to pay for your home. You're working to pay for your car. But those things aren't yours most of the time. Those things belong to somebody else. But the real question is, how much work are you going to do every day for the capitalist who you owe money to? And we're going to break that down and show that very simply so that you can understand that in a very visceral way. Where again, imagine that every day you were paid $120 in cash. And then just imagine that you walked out the door and first there's the government collector and he says, give me 30% of that. So you say, okay. And you're going to give him your $36. And then you're going, oh, well, I had 120. I had to give him 36 and I got 84. Okay. I have $84. But then what if you owe somebody? Then they got their hand out there and the bank goes, oh, well, you owe me $1 for holding your account. We're going to charge you $1 a day in fees. Oh, there's another $1 out. The next guy is $1. Oh, well, what about, oh, now you want to live. Well, that's going to cost you $20. Oh, you want food. That's going to cost you a piece. And by the time you get done walking down that line of everybody with their hand out, you got no money left. And in fact, there's 3 people there probably saying you owe me, which tomorrow means you're going to have to pay me double. And then you go, holy shit, how do I ever get ahead when everyone's got their hand out. And that's literally what's happening to a lot of people. It's just happening on a monthly basis. And they look at every month, and at the end of every month, they have more credit card debt than they had the month before. So how much are you working when you walk out the door? How much of that are you giving away to other banks or other institutions that's yours? So the whole idea of the podcast is for you to keep more of yours, for you to understand what you have as disposable income, where you're spending it, and if that's really where you want to spend it. Understanding that if you buy things you cannot afford to buy, those things end up costing you an extremely larger sum of money than had you been patient and waited for them to buy. But most importantly with this one, I want you to understand two things. One, we're programmed. All of us are. 98% of people are coming up with an orange kangaroo in Denmark, just like you did. At best, you came up with something slightly different, but 98% of people are orange kangaroo in Denmark. That's most of us, people. First time I did it, I was an orange kangaroo in Denmark. Now I can be a red koala bear in Denmark because I know the game that's being played. But that's exactly it. When you're asked the question, are you on autopilot, doing the same thing, providing the same response that they want you to provide? When the bank increases your fees, are you providing the response that most people provide? Oh, well, it's more effort to change banks than it's worth, even though they're going to charge me every day. When it comes time to look for a new apartment, are you going to put that off and procrastinate it? And then when they raise the rent on you, well, it's easier to just stay. It's always going to be a matter of convenience that they're going to charge you the most for. Make it convenient for you to borrow. Make it convenient for you to stay. Make it convenient for you to have another drink at the bar. This is the way the system is set up against you. And if you're not aware of it and you don't call it out for what it is, you're going to become entrapped in it, and capitalism's not going to work for you. You're going to think that it's the system of capitalism that's broken, when most of what's broken is your decision-making within it, and you realizing that you've been programmed. The second piece that I want you to take away from this one is that you are not alone. The system is not set up for you to thrive as an individual unless you know the rules of the game. Most of the financial podcasts out there, most of the financial information that you will find is about investing. What to invest in, how to make more money, how to make money on your money. Should you be in real estate? Should you be in bonds? Should you be in stocks? What other alternative assets classes are there that you could be in? But most people aren't in any of them, with the exception of their 401k plan at work. So if you're not in any of those, if you have no other investments, you're not in the game of capitalism. You're one of the people capitalism is preying upon. That's why this whole segment is a survival guide to capitalism. It's for you to figure your way out of this jungle so that it doesn't eat you alive. Because if you don't work at it, it's going to eat you alive. For most people listening to this, it's probably eating you alive right now. And you're saying, when are you going to shut up and get me to the tools? Well, it's coming. But the most important piece I want you to take away from this is that you're not alone. Most people are in this situation. And most people don't want to talk about it. And this is why I keep emphasizing this point, because the first piece that you've got to have is you've got to know that you have a problem, and you have to have a willingness to learn about it. You've got to understand that this is important for you, that you're not alone in not knowing about this, that this is not taught really anywhere. Most parents don't teach this because most parents don't know this. When I was in public accounting, the one thing that I absolutely realized is that it is really, really hard for most people to switch accountants. Most people only switch accountants when their accountant literally ignores them, has abused them in some way, or they think or they really believe it just doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. That they really don't have a professional background and professional expertise. Most people don't want to switch because they don't want to talk to money to anybody. Most people are generally this way. And you know why? Because we all have felt, well, we're the ignorant person in the room. We all listened to Cocktail where Tom Cruise was talking to his uncle at the bar and his uncle told him, and when the topic of money comes up, you make damn sure you know more than anyone else in the room. And everyone went, oh shit, is that really true? Then I guess I'm done talking. I guess I shouldn't say anything because I don't know the most in the room. In fact, most of us are taught very little about money. Most people, the only thing we really know about money is how to spend it. But that's not entirely true because most of the concepts that I've gone over are easy concepts to understand. Everybody gets them. It's putting them together to go, oh, that's all that it is? It's just those 5 or 6 concepts together? So we're going to go over those. I'm going to teach you those. And the best way for you to start learning about money is to start asking people you know about it and creating these conversations. And they're not sexy up front. People don't want to talk about it, but it's when it's about, hey, I want to improve my life. I want to know the rules of this game. This is the system that we're playing under, and no one knows the rules. Let's go play basketball. What are the rules? I'll tell you afterwards. I'm guaranteed to win. Because I can make up new rules if I don't like the current rules. But I know you're going to be traveling and double dribbling all over the place when you don't even know what that is. And by the time you figure out how it works, the game's over and I've won by 50. It's the same thing here. Most people don't figure it out until they're way past where they need to be. 40 or 50, still trying to get out of debt. Literally just read an article. America is further in debt than ever. Across the board. Literally the title from the Wall Street Journal, U.S. economy fuels boom in consumer debt. Consumer debt, including credit cards, auto and student loan and personal loans, is on pace to top $4 trillion in 2019. That is the most ever. And guess what? Consumer spending increased 2.7% last year. Disposable income rose 2.7%, i.e., everybody spent everything else that they made. So people aren't paying down debt, they're just taking out more of it. And then these idiot economists have the nerve to say debt increase is a sign of a strong economy. No, it's not. Debt increase is a sign of an economy soon to crash. A strong economy actually reduces its total overall debt. We need more personal savings. We need more personal accountability. And you as an individual. Consumers on average owed $6,826 on their credit cards. You're working for somebody else if you owe on your credit cards. You know that. You're paying interest every month to the capitalist. So if I'm the capitalist, I love this system. I loan you money. You keep paying me money on my money. I keep making more and more. Credit card debts have high interest rates, which mean credit card companies, i.e. banks, make a bunch of money from you. And then they talk about whether credit card growth remains manageable. Well, to you as the individual, all that means is, are you going to have a job long enough to keep paying somebody else for all of your debt? Or would you rather figure out how to get back to zero, which is what we're going to offer you, some knowledge and a program to get yourself back to zero? And for some people, that's going to be declaring bankruptcy, and that's okay. For some people, that's the right answer. But people are drowning in debt, spending way too much on cars for way too much debt. Way too much on student loans for way too much debt. Way too much on shit they don't need for credit card bills. And all of that debt means you're working for somebody else. And if you're happy with that and you want to keep working for somebody else, great. I love you. I, as the capitalist, want to buy up your debt and you can work for me. I don't have to do anything anymore. I just lend people money. And my money makes money for me. And then the money that I made off of that money, it starts making its own money. And we're going to show you how that works on the next episode. The next podcast, we'll go through the basics of money and the things that you need to know. And you know most of these things. You just haven't put them together yet. They're not difficult concepts up front. I do have a secondary class which goes into a little more complicated topics. 99% of those everyone can grasp. I'm not asking you to learn about financial concepts that the market likes to use so that they can confuse the shit out of you. Like derivatives and insurance-backed bonds and all sorts of puts and calls and different things that they can get you to. I don't want you to learn any of that shit. I want you to learn about yourself. I want you to learn very simple concepts. I want to get America to a level where we understand the capitalistic system that we live in and what that means and how that affects us and how we can not be a victim to it and how you can actually thrive in it, how you can be the person who's loaning out money. And it doesn't have to be a lot. But then I'll show you how it adds up over time. But I'll show you in the opposite effect where if you owe, you're going to owe a lot for a very long time. And it's very hard to get out of. But most importantly, it's hard to get out of when you don't realize that you've been programmed. When you don't realize that what they want is a bunch of consumers buying shit all the time on credit. That helps the company sell you more shit. The company makes more money. It helps the bank because you pay the bank more. So all of those things that you're buying, not only are you buying them now at a higher price than you should probably pay for them, but you're also going to pay interest on them, which makes them really expensive. But know that you're not alone. Most people are in this situation. So, I hope that you stay with us through this program. I know this information is valuable to a lot of people out there. You need to know that the system's not set up for you. You need to know that you've been programmed to act a certain way and think a certain way. And you also need to know that if you allow it to, the system will let you work for other people your entire life. From student loan debt all the way through. You can be in massive amounts of debt your entire life and be working for other people. So when I talk about freedom, I'm talking about the freedom to just work for yourself, for your benefit, and not continue to work for other people all the time. Because if you want to work for other people all the time, they're willing to take your money. I said, if we paid you in cash and you walked outside, there'll be people sticking their hand out who you don't even owe. But if you're willing to give it to them, they'll take it. And then there'll be the other people that you do owe. And they'll be first in line, and they will take it. And if you don't pay them up front, guess what? They can go to court and actually take it out of your wages. The reason that the government requires that most business owners become their tax collector is because it's a lot easier for them to do that than actually have to go collect everybody's taxes. Even though they too can go just take your money out of your bank account when they feel like it. So I'm going to try and make this stuff interesting. Finance is often a little bit dry. I try and bring a little attitude to it. But the reality is that what I'm talking about is your personal financial freedom. Not being under the foot of somebody else. And I'm pretty sure everyone wants to get there. So thanks for listening. I hope you take the 2 takeaways. You're not alone, and you've been programmed. So now we're going to change those things. And we're going to help you get to the next spot. So thanks for listening. This is Keep Yours, your survival guide to capitalism. We'll be back next time to talk about basic financial terms. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the Keep Yours podcast. If you like what you've heard, head on over to iTunes to subscribe and leave us a review. This will help us reach more listeners, grow the show, and keep putting out more episodes like this one. Check out show notes and more resources at www.keepyours.org. See you next week.